In a world where the tides of globalization and deglobalization ebb and flow with increasing unpredictability, China stands at a pivotal crossroads. As the globe's largest exporter, commanding a staggering 30% of the world's manufactured goods, China's economic prowess, fueled by globalization, is undeniable. Yet, the winds of change are blowing. The rise of deglobalization, marked by increasing nationalism and a retreat from global cooperation, poses a formidable challenge to China's established order. From the Brexit saga to the Trump administration's protectionist policies and the recent global pandemic, the world is witnessing a paradigm shift. This shift, further exacerbated by the Russia-Ukraine conflict, is not just a geopolitical realignment, but a fundamental questioning of the global economic fabric that has benefited China immensely. To understand the complex issues surrounding China's role as a global superpower, we will answer three main questions. How will deglobalization impact China's economic model? Can China's dual circulation strategy counterbalance the effects of deglobalization? And what role will China play in the shifting global power dynamics? So first, let's understand how China got here today as the world's largest exporter, where nearly 30% of the world's manufactured goods worth $3.5 trillion are produced. And so, one of the key drivers for its economic success is globalization. For context, globalization is the catch-all term that refers to the integration of markets, trade, and investments with few barriers to speed up flow of products and services between nations. In recent history, the first wave of globalization occurred in the 19th century, fueled by Industrial Revolution, but it was interrupted by World War I, followed by protectionism, the Great Depression, and World War II. The second wave of globalization started after World War II, led by the United States that promoted free trade and investment, which boomed from the 1970s to 2010s. During this period, global import and export each multiplied more than 50 times. This wave is still ongoing, but experts are saying globalization is now running in reverse, causing deglobalization. As the name suggests, deglobalization is a movement towards a less connected world, characterized by powerful nation-states, local solutions, and border controls rather than global institutions, treaties, and free movement. The world is rapidly moving towards deglobalization, as seen with the UK exiting Brexit, Trump's Make America Great Again movement, the past decade's decline in foreign direct investment, strict COVID-19 lockdowns all over the world, the Russia-Ukraine war, and a surge in populist politics in Europe. Perhaps the greatest evidence of deglobalization is taking place through Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has accelerated the division of the world into two blocs. One embraces the world's democracies, and the other its autocracies. Although deglobalization can foster more diversity and pluralism in the world, as different models of development can coexist and compete, it seems like China stands to lose the most here. Why? You see, COVID-19 lockdowns exposed the vulnerabilities of global supply chains, particularly those that were too reliant on China and Chinese imports. Trade war between the US and China, which began during the Trump administration, has only intensified. In response to the disruption, multinational corporations are diversifying where they produce goods and relocating closer to home. This process is known as reshoring. For instance, American businesses are heavily investing in Mexico and relocating their factories to Mexico from China. In response, China seeks to reduce its dependence on the US and its allies, and to create alternative platforms and mechanisms for cooperation and development. President Xi Jinping has planned this well before Russia invaded Ukraine. In 2020, China unveiled its so-called dual circulation strategy, which aims to foster domestic demand and technological self-sufficiency. But the real question is, will China's strategy work? Can the dragon of the world economy be able to overcome the risks that deglobalization poses to its global dominance? China's involvement in globalization can be traced back to the era of Mao Zedong, who led the Communist Revolution and established the People's Republic of China in 1949. Although Mao initially pursued a policy of self-reliance and isolation from the capitalist world, he later recognized the need to engage with other countries, especially the Soviet Union, to obtain economic and military assistance. Mao also initialized several diplomatic efforts to improve China's international status and influence, such as supporting anti-colonial movements in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, joining the United Nations in 1971, and further establishing relations with the United States. However, it was after Mao's death in 1976 that China embarked on more opening up and reforming its economy under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping. Deng adopted a pragmatic approach that combined socialist ideology with market mechanisms, allowing for greater foreign trade, investment, and technology transfer. Deng also launched a series of special economic zones, coastal development areas, and free trade zones that offered preferential policies and incentives for foreign businesses. Under Deng's guidance, China gradually integrated into the global economic system and finally became a member of the World Trade Organization in 2001. As a result of these reforms and opening up policies, China achieved remarkable economic growth and development in the past 4 decades. It has leveraged globalization to become the factory of the world and second largest economy of the world. Soon, it used its economic power to expand its geopolitical influence and aspirations through initiatives such as the Belt and Road Initiative, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and right now leading the Brics nations. There's no doubt that China's success and influence shook the world, which has enabled it to challenge the US-led global order. That's why the US started to take serious measures to deal with the rising superpower, which is broadly seen during the Trump administration, followed by the Biden administration. For starters, the Belt and Road Initiative caused havoc, criticized by the capitalist countries as a debt-trap diplomacy, as a predatory, opaque enterprise, and as a threat to Western interests. Then comes China's day-to-day authoritarian and tyrannical action and extreme human rights abuses in Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and recently in Tibet, which have provoked international condemnation and sanctions, leading to the collapse of the EU-China Investment Agreement. Moreover, geopolitically, China's aggressive actions in the South China Sea, like trespassing in the neighbors' sea borders and performing military practices or even creating artificial military bases as they own the whole South China Sea. The Taiwan Strait and the India-China border dispute have also raised tensions and triggered military responses from the US and its allies. And recently, China's tacit support for Russia's war against Ukraine has further alienated the West, pushing the NATO members together in a united front against autocracy. As a result, China faces the risk of losing access to major Western markets. In 2021, Chinese exports to the US, EU, and Japan accounting for 38% of total exports, nearly $1.3 trillion. We're already witnessing such efforts from America, as during the first 6 months of 2023, US goods imports from China fell drastically to 25%, while an increase with Mexico, which eventually helped Mexico to take over China's position as the top trading partner. The question is, can China recoup the money it's losing from outside of Western market? There's no denying that deglobalization poses serious risks and costs for China, which threatens to undermine China's achievements and prospects in 3 key aspects: growth, technology, and competition. First, deglobalization will hamper China's economic growth and development, which depend heavily on the global market and supply chains. China's domestic market, despite its size and potential, cannot fully substitute for the external market, especially as China faces structural problems such as high debt, rapid population aging, and an imploding real estate sector. These problems will continue to constrain GDP growth, while sharp income inequality, soaring housing costs, and inadequate social protections will limit consumer demand. The closure of factories producing goods for export and the associated job losses will exacerbate these challenges further. A significant share of China's infrastructure, especially energy and transportation networks, will be underused or even become redundant. Second, deglobalization will hinder China's technological innovation and advancement, which are essential for its transition to a knowledge-based economy. China's technological progress has relied largely on its ability to acquire, assimilate, and improve foreign technologies through trade, investment, education, research, and espionage. However, deglobalization will reduce reduce China's access to the technologies it needs to compete with the advanced economies. US sanctions have already crippled telecoms giant Huawei and prevented SMIC, a semiconductor manufacturer, from getting its hands on the most advanced technologies. If the US persuades the EU and Japan to revive the Coordinating Committee for Multilateral Export Controls, or COCOM, to choke off technology flows to China, a prospect made more likely by the Ukrainian war, China will have little chance of winning the technology race with the US. Third, deglobalization will erode China's efficiency gains from dynamic competition, which have improved the quality and productivity of its products and services. Products made and sold in China are of a far higher quality today than they were 2 decades ago, largely because Chinese companies must compete with their Western rivals. But if they're insulated from such pressure by protectionist policies or geopolitical barriers, they will lose their incentive to produce higher quality products at lower cost, which has been a key strategy to becoming the top exporter. In response to these challenges and risks, China has adopted a dual circulation strategy of self-reliance and openness. On the front side, it's emphasized the need to strengthen its domestic market. On the flip side, it's reaffirmed its commitment to globalization. It has also tried to diversify its trading partners and enhance its regional connectivity. However, this dual strategy faces many difficulties and dilemmas. On one side, China needs to avoid being isolated or marginalized by the international community, while also respecting the diversity and differences of other countries. On the other hand, China needs to meet the rising expectations and aspirations of its people, while also maintaining social stability and harmony. As a matter of fact, China already knows how vulnerable they are from Western hegemony and deglobalization, and that's why China has accelerated its effort with Brics. The Brics group, which represents more than 3 billion people, have been expanding efforts to de-dollarize, or reduce their reliance on the US dollar as the dominant global currency. The Brics have also provided alternatives to existing global mechanisms deemed to be heavily influenced by the collective West and their policies. The Brics New Development Bank, NDB, established as a partial alternative to the World Bank, has approved over 90 projects worth $32 billion to support members' infrastructure. Moreover, they've expanded their cooperation on various issues such as climate change, health, security, and digital technology. However, this strategy is fraught with difficulties and uncertainties. The Brics are not a cohesive bloc, but a diverse group of countries with different political systems, economic models, and strategic interests. They often compete or conflict with each other on regional or global issues. For instance, India and China have a long-standing rival dispute. New members like Saudi Arabia and Iran are also posing a threat to each other. Russia and China have divergent views on how to deal with Asia and the Middle East and Africa. More importantly, the Brics are not immune to the pressures and influences of the West. They still depend on Western markets and institutions for their development. They also face challenges from Western sanctions, interventions, and alliances that seek to contain or isolate them. Therefore, China's reliance on the Brics and other emerging economies is not a viable alternative to its integration with the West. The Brics are not enough to compensate for China's loss of Western markets, nor to provide China with the technological and institutional support it needs for its development. The Brics are also not a reliable partner for China in defending its interests and values against Western pressure and interference. The Brics are more likely to pursue their own agendas and interests, rather than align with China's vision and goals. Therefore, China will likely be deglobalization's big loser in the long run. Its economic growth model, which depends heavily on globalization, will become more unsustainable and unstable. Its dual strategy, which tries to balance self-reliance and openness, will become more untenable and contradictory. China will have to face the reality and consequences of its own actions and choices in a more complex and contested global environment. If you're finding value in our content and would like to stay updated with our latest videos on geopolitics and economics, consider subscribing. This way, you won't miss out on the fascinating content we have lined up just for you.